Hello, and welcome to our webinar, Graphic Novels for Adults and Young Adults. I'm Sarah Hunter, editor for Graphic Novels and Books for Youth at Booklist. Before I begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. Links to today's slide presentation and title list were included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the links located there. You can also download the slides and title list by typing the URLs on the screen into your web browser. If you have any trouble accessing these materials, please contact us at webinars@booklistonline.com. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a question for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. Booklist offers closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable captions on your screen, please look for and click the Captions icon on the toolbar mentioned earlier. From there, you can select Show or Hide Captions from the menu that appears. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of the captions at any time by selecting Caption Settings. And finally, Booklist expects all participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness. Anyone who violates this standard of behavior, including engaging in any form of harassment, may, at the discretion of the organizers, be immediately removed. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from Jeffrey Lapid, Sales and Marketing Specialist at Mad Cave Studios, Morgana Santilli, Sales Specialist, and Ingrid Lorenzi, Marketing Assistant, both at Oni Press, Jen Chan, Executive Director of Sales and Marketing at Fantagraphics, and Katie Sains, Director of Sales, Book Market at Oni Press. First, we'll hear from Jeffrey Lapid. Jeffrey is a publishing professional with over 10 years of experience working with comic books, graphic novels, and children's picture books. He lives in Los Angeles, California. Take it away, Jeffrey.
Hey, cool. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Booklist, and thanks everybody for taking the time to be here. My name is Jeffrey Lapid. I'm with Mad Cave Studios, and I'll be talking about some of our graphic novels that we have coming up in the coming months. So next slide, please. Okay, our first title here is One Path. This is a graphic novel from Greg Broadmoor. Hunted by giant primordial beasts, red in tooth and claw, a tribe of cave girls scratch out a bleak existence in a brutal, uncaring world. They cling on to a life where not many make it beyond the first few months, let alone to adulthood. Governed by ancient laws and arcane rituals, the only constants they have, they follow the old ways on pain of death. But a woman known as One Path, a hunter and a warrior, has a plan to change their lives. This plan could free them from the constant threat of great predators, but it will undoubtedly overturn everything they know. Next slide, please. This is the first in a series of graphic novels. Greg Broadmoor's boldly painted art is a real standout in this book. It's got a really pulpy fantasy feel to it. Kind of reminds me of like Frank Frazetta or Boris Vallejo, like kind of classic fantasy greats like that. Majestic landscapes, brutal action, all of that kind of stuff. We got some really great advanced praise for this book. Dave Gibbons, the artist of Watchmen, called it a visceral and raw tour de force of atmosphere and action. And writer Neil Stevenson said it was wildly beautiful and intense beyond compare. Next slide, please. We have The Body Trade here. It's a dark revenge story from Zach Thompson and Argentinian artist Jock. Body Trade is an unrelenting revenge story set against the backdrop of America's aftermarket for dead bodies. Critically acclaimed writer Zach Thompson and star artist Jock team up for this neo-noir crime thriller rife with bloodshed and brutality in the tradition of Blue Ruin and Hell or High Water. Next slide, please. An ex-con trying to atone for a life of poor decisions sets on a dark and violent path as he tries to find answers about what happened to his estranged son. To solve this mystery, he'll have to venture into the dangerous world of black market organ sales known as the body trade. The Body Trade is a lean, mean revenge thriller. It's it's brutal. It's dark. It's neo-noir with it's got this atmospheric grit to it, kind of like David Fincher's Seven. But it lives in this moral gray area that readers of Ed Brubaker's Criminal or Brian Azzarello's 100 Bullets will be comfortable in that space. So yeah, that's the Body Trade. Next is Next slide is Gotchaman. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Next slide is Sunder. This is a fantasy epic from Pierre-Alexandre Comtois. And this is about the adventures of mysterious. This is mysterious fantasy land populated by these fantasy creatures. Um, a young monk, Zeke, must return this mysterious book to its proper owner, and along the way, he encounters all sorts of dark figures and fantastic creatures that are going to be standing in his way. So this will be coming out in May, and we'll also have a hardcover edition coming out in November. Next slide, please. And here's some art from that. The Pierre-Alexandre Comtois comes from a background of animation and design, so very fluid and really cool character designs in this book. Next slide, please. Next slide is next book here is Gotchaman: The Solo Adventures, Volume 1. Our line of Gotchaman comics debuted last year, and we've been getting a lot of wonderful praise for what our creative teams have been doing in the world of Gotchaman. Gotchaman: The Solo Adventures collects 3 self-contained stories that put the spotlight on the individual heroes as they take on missions in fresh, new settings. Next slide. In the first story, Ken goes undercover to infiltrate an underground gambling ring where martial artists from around the world fight to the death. Then in the second story, June and her trusty G3 hovercycle take the spotlight in a high-octane, action-packed chase as she battles an elite squad of motorcycle-riding death bikers who are intent on hijacking an armored train. And then the third adventure is on the high seas, and it features Ryu finding himself defending a harbor town and its citizens from an attacking group of high-tech pirate scavengers. Next slide, please. Here are some Gotchaman titles that will be available for Mad Cave. Volume 1 of the main series by Cullen Bunn and Chris Batista is out now. Volume 2 will be coming in July. Also in the fall, we'll have a deluxe hardcover edition of Volume 1 that'll have bonus material, behind-the-scenes material, and a gallery of all the variant covers that we've done for Volume 1. Next slide, please. We also have Gotchaman spin-off series available. Gotchaman Galactor by Steve Orlando is out now, and Gotchaman Only One Earth by Tommy Lee Edwards will be available in July. Next slide, please. Nostalgia. Nostalgia is the first graphic novel from Scott Hoffman, also known as Baby Daddy of the band Scissor Sisters. So shout out to all the elder millennials on the call here who know Scissor Sisters. This is a story of a reclusive rock star named Nostalgia who receives a mysterious package that forces him to face both his past and a resistance movement that represents all the ideals he has once stood for. Next slide, please. It's a story set in a possible near future about an aging rock star who has the power to make music using only his memories. It's a sweeping and heartfelt story about how we remember our past and how we bring ourselves into an unknown future every day of our lives. Next slide, please. Okay, our next book is Dick Tracy, Volume 2. This is the next chapter of our Dick Tracy revival. Next slide, please. With no time to recover from the explosive events of the gang war in Volume 1, Dick Tracy is now challenged to uncover the identity of the mysterious serial killer known only as the Blank. Volume 1 was a reintroduction to Dick Tracy and his world, as well as all of the colorful villains who lurk in the shadows. Volume 1 kind of set all the pieces in place, gave us the backstory for who Dick Tracy is and how he came to be a detective, a super detective like this. And Volume 2 is where all the real action really starts picking up. It's a continuation of this really kind of unique reinvention that Alex Zagura has created for Dick Tracy, and it's perfect for fans of crime and noir comics like Newburn, Parker, and The Good Asian. Next up is Spectrum, which is an ambitious, high-concept graphic novel about how music shapes our reality. Fans of Phonogram and The Wicked and the Divine will really like this one, I think. Melody Parker is losing her mind. She's living on the streets of Seattle during the WTO protests of 1999. She's seeing things, androids, aliens, pigs in high fashion, and a creature named Echo, one of the sustained, elemental beings with the power to alter reality through music. She invites Melody to join her as she brings about the end of the world. Next slide, please. It sounds completely wild and overwhelming, but under all the weird aesthetics, aliens, and magic, there's a deeply human story about wanting to connect with something beyond yourself and how our perceptions and experiences can literally change our reality. Dave Chisholm the artist Dave Chisholm has previously worked on a graphic novel about Miles Davis called Miles Davis and the Search for Sound. His art's colorful, vibrant, trippy, but it still feels really grounded in reality. It's perfect for a story like this. Next slide, please. Flash Gordon Quarterly. This is our new this is a new volume for our Flash Gordon series. Our Flash Gordon comics debuted last year, and readers have really been loving what writer Jeremy Adams been bringing to the series. It's been a really cool modern update of this famous pulpy space adventurer. But that's just the main series is just the tip of our plans for for our work with Flash Gordon. Next slide, please. In July, we've got the first volume of our Flash Gordon Quarterly, first collection of our Gordon Quarterly comics. And each issue puts the spotlight on a different member of the main series supporting cast. Volume 1 features deeper looks into fan favorites, the mighty Voltan, the swashbuckling Prince Baron, and the lion warrior Thun. This volume also collects 6 flash fiction stories. These are stories that present totally new takes on Flash Gordon characters in new genres and new settings. So on the right there, you see Ming the Merciless as a sort of a rogue cowboy in this Western set story for Flash Gordon. So kind of a cool new way to take a new look at these characters. World of Flash Gordon is still growing, and it all starts here with the multiverse of stories in Flash Gordon Quarterly. Next slide, please. Kill Train is the last Mad Cave title I'll be talking about today before moving on to our other imprints. To control the population explosion that nearly crippled the city, New York has instituted Kill Train, a randomized extermination program where designated subway trains are picked at random and all the passengers are slaughtered by the end of the line. So this is by Olivia Cortero Briggs. Next slide, please. Sorry. This is by Olivia Cortero Briggs. She's a TV writer known for Queen of the South, The Arrangement, and Criminal Minds Beyond Borders. She recently found success in the comics world with Fate the Winx Saga, published by our Maverick imprint. Kill Train is a far cry from the teenage drama of Fate the Winx Saga. It's basically The Purge meets Snowpiercer, all taking place on a New York subway. Full of heart-pumping action and brutality, but underneath all the blood and mayhem is a story of an ordinary woman fighting through her past traumas and finding the will to survive. Next slide, please. Up next is, I just wanted to spotlight some titles from our Maverick imprint. This is our YA graphic novels imprint. Next slide, please. Student Government is the first title here. This is a fun YA graphic novel about a group of underdogs and misfits sticking up for what's right and taking a stand against corporate greed. Next slide, please. The dynamics between the main cast of characters all feel very lived in, feel very real. I think YA readers are going to just love seeing these characters just interact and banter with each other. There's an anti-authoritarian mission here that the main characters in Student Government embark on, and it's one that I think will play really well with YA readers who are beginning to develop a sense of political awareness and social justice. And to that end, in the back matter of Student Government, we're including a guide on how to register to vote for all of our YA readers out there who want to get involved. Next slide, please. Up next is a re-release of one of our most popular titles from early days of Mad Cave, from before we even had a YA imprint. The last session is about a diverse group of friends who have been playing with the same D&D game since they were kids. But now with college graduation looming and with everyone's lives about to change, they decide they're going to get together for one last session before all have to go down their different paths. However, things get complicated when veteran player Jay brings in his new partner Cassandra, who's never played D&D. Narrative switches back and forth between, sorry, next slide, please. The narrative switches back and forth between action in-game, between the action that's in the game and the IRL drama that's happening with the friend group. So it makes for a really funny, relatable story about friendships changing and growing. It's perfect for fans of things like Critical Role and Adventure Zone. It's always been one of our most popular Mad Cave titles, and because it found so much success among YA readers, we're reprinting it under the Maverick imprint. Next slide, please. This edition will also feature a new epilogue that introduces the next volume, Volume 2, which will be coming out in October. And it features an all-new cast of characters playing a new game. Next slide, please. Okay, I've got a minute left here, so we'll go through this quickly. Princess Guinevere and the Jewel Riders, Volume 2. This picks up right where Volume 1 left off. Avalon is in peril, and the evil Lady Kale has returned. Only through the power of magic and friendship can Gwen, Fallon, and Tamara save Avalon and restore order to their beloved kingdom. Volume 1 was kind of a surprise hit for us last summer. Kirker's Reviews said that there's an unmistakable positivity to the narrative which encourages openness and demonstrates that vulnerability isn't always a weakness. Sparkling characters highlight this diverting illustrated fantasy tale. It's the perfect YA graphic novel for readers who are fans of things like She-Ra or magical girl stories like Sailor Moon. Next slide, please. The last title I'm going to talk about here for Maverick is In Mourning. Paula Cheshire tells the story of her complex feelings and grieving after the loss of her mother, walking us through the process of her loss. And while the loss hurts more than anything, the grieving process, being in mourning, leads to one goal: learning to live with this newfound pain and learning to grow from it without letting it take you over. It's really relatable. Next slide, please. Really relatable story. And about dealing with complex emotions. Really, that's all the time I have. I've got some more slides here about Nakama Press, which is our manga imprint. I'll be talking more about that at next month's book list manga webinar. So yeah, that's it for me. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much, Jeffrey. Next, we'll hear from Morgana Santilli and Ingrid Lorenzi. Morgana is the sales specialist at Yen Press. She is a former comic shop manager and buyer, and always particularly loved helping readers find their new favorite series. Other than reading manga, Morgana enjoys drinking lots of tea, snuggling with her two black cats, crocheting, and collecting too many books for her children's personal library. Ingrid is the marketing assistant at Yen Press. A former bookseller and used book buyer at Strand Books, she is an avid fantasy reader and advocate for translated works. Aside from collecting old books and trying to win over her cat's affection, she spends her days scavenging for the best bubble tea places in the city and taking strolls in Central Park. Thanks for being here today, Morgana and Ingrid.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you everybody for joining us. I hope you're all doing well. Almost the end of February here, pretty exciting. My name, like Sarah said, is Morgana Santilli. I'm the sales specialist at Yen Press, and today I'm joined by my colleague Ingrid.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us. I'm Ingrid Lorenzi, the marketing assistant at Yen Press.
Today, we want to tell you a little bit about some of our recent and upcoming titles. So if you go to the next slide, please. First up is Hell is Dark with No Flowers. This is a manga adaptation of a novel that we also publish, and I think this is one of my favorite new series that we've been publishing lately. This is a great kind of dark supernatural morality play kind of story. Next slide, please. You can see here our main character, Seiji, has the ability to, when he looks at somebody, he can see a monster. And what he's actually seeing is that person's sin represented by a yokai. And Seiji comes upon Shiroshi, who is this mysterious kid who seems to also have some abilities and helps people consult with their issues and figure out their sins. But he might have a little bit of a dark side to him and a dark reason that he's doing this. Next slide, please. And there's Shiroshi. You know, he's beautiful, but he's a little bit tricky. You can see him here kind of giving Seiji the rundown in a very Sherlock Holmes style, where he's like, I can tell exactly who you are because of X, Y, and Z. So fans of mysteries, fans of supernatural tales, fans of yokai should definitely check this one out. Next slide, please. Obviously, like I said, this is based on a novel which we also publish at Yen, also very similar to our other series, Phantom Tales of the Night. And for those of you who have been in the industry for a while or aware of manga for a while, you might remember a title called Pet Shop of Horrors, which Seven Seas is currently republishing. That's also a great read-alike. So if you have patrons who are fans of that series or series like that, this is a great read-alike for them. And I'm going to turn it over to Ingrid. Next slide, please.
All right, so going away from mystery and more into Fantasyland, I picked up This World Strategy Guide, a title that came out this January. Now, imagine you live in a world filled with magic, leading a very quiet life, and one day you find the Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook. What would you do? So this is the plight that Sana, our protagonist in I Picked Up This World Strategy Guide, finds herself into. So after picking up a strange book in the forest, Sana discovers that this book contains secrets and details about the town she lives in and even future events. And amongst all of these, a hero even appears in these pages too. So now it's really up to her to decide if she wants to follow this book to a T and stay in her village, very safe and very quiet, or instead challenge the prophecies and events hidden inside the guide's pages. Next slide, please. All right. So something that we want to note of this title is that it features not only a gorgeous art style, but all the pages are in full color, something that you don't see often in manga and just adds more to the visuals of this cute series. Next slide. So as I mentioned before, this is a very cute and charming series, and Sana, the heroine, is adorable on her own. But unbefold, she's also a very strong-willed girl and does not bend down to the power of nobles, as readers will soon discover. Next slide, please. So if your readers like a female-led fantasy series with a bit of cottagecore vibe, such as a Sugar Apple Fairy Tale, or if your readers are even into Frieren but wanted something with more RPG-style elements, then we highly suggest checking out this series. Next, please, I will turn it back to Morgana.
Thank you. All right. The Color of the End, Mission in the Apocalypse is a really exciting, kind of unique title. When I first saw this, I was reminded of Tsutomu Nihei's Blam. Again, if those of you who are familiar with manga might remember those giant oversized books. And the reason is, next slide, please. There are these beautiful cityscapes, really incredible representations of this dystopian science fiction world. In this story, Earth has been besieged by these creatures that spread disease and illness, and there is one girl that we follow throughout who is the last known survivor, and she is looking for other survivors. Next slide, please. You can see her here encountering one of these strange beings. She is, she's desperately seeking out other living people, but she might also have a secret of her own. Next slide, please. This is a great read for anybody who likes some of our titles like Girls Last Tour or Touring After the Apocalypse. Again, it is a gorgeously illustrated science fiction series, a little bit dark, but there is kind of a ribbon of hope that is woven throughout the story as well. I mentioned Tsutomu Nihei. This is also good for fans of Mobius, the French artist. Anybody who's looking for a kind of rich science fiction dystopian world with a little bit of mystery and a lot of atmosphere. Next slide, please.
Right. So, if you're not familiar, Yen Press also publishes Korean comics or manhwa, and we have an imprint dedicated to it, and it's called the Ice Press. So, this February, we released Kill the Villainess, a dark romantic series following Eris, a reincarnated college student who finds herself in a really, really bad situation. You see, the body she reincarnates to is an often extremely jealous noblewoman who is destined to die under the hands of her own fiancé. But thankfully, she reincarnated before poisoning her rival, the event that would lead to her own demise. So she still has some time to turn the situation around. Next slide, please. But what really drives Ares, and also what really drives the narrative in this series, is that she's extremely determined to return to her own world, even if it leads to her own death. So we do see her attempting suicide multiple times, but nothing seems to work. That is until she meets a witch who can see that the soul inside of her does not really match with the body that she's currently living in, and might have a way to make Ares' wish come true. Next. So while our romantasy series, Kill the Villainess, distinguishes itself for its realistic approach to transmigration, tackling sensitive subjects such as suicide or self-harm, and it also offers a refreshing perspective on tropes commonly found within the reincarnated villainess genre. Next slide, please. So if you like romantasy series starring strong female leads and caring male lead that knows when to let go, which might be a minor spoiler, then we suggest also checking out this very dramatic manhwa. Next slide, please.
All right, I'm going to finish up with a really unique title. Helena and Mr. Big Bad Wolf is actually a Taiwanese manga originally, and this was a real surprise for me. It looks very cute on the cover, and it is in many ways a very sweet story, but it follows Helena, who has led a very tragic life for one so young. Her parents are gone, her gets into a terrible accident, she is in an orphanage, and the one thing that keeps her going is her love of stories, both creating them and reading them. Next slide, please. She has the opportunity to meet her favorite author illustrator, somebody who goes by the name of Mr. Big Bad Wolf. His picture books are intended for adult audiences since they're a little bit on the dark side, but I think that darkness kind of appeals to the life that, you know, the trauma that Helena has. And she's so excited to meet him, and he's kind of standoffish. He doesn't really know how to interact with people. And as you can see, he always wears a wolf mask. He is never without it. The two kind of strike up an unlikely relationship, and Mr. Big Bad Wolf ends up coming to the orphanage and teaching art and storytelling to the children there. Next slide, please. You can see him here saying that, like, I don't know how to teach art. Drawing is just something that you do. And again, he and Helena have a lot more in common than you realize at first, and the two really come together and form this friendship and move through some of their issues together. It's a very short and poignant series. It's over in 2 volumes. We don't have a release date for the second one yet, but the first one just came out, I believe this week. Next slide, please. This is a great read for anybody who likes a heartwarming story, but also isn't afraid of a little bit of darkness. It's not an easy read, especially when you consider there's children suffering. But it does end up being a really incredible journey and really powerful for anybody, like I'm sure most of us here, who really believe in the power of storytelling and what that can do for a person. Next slide, please.
All right, so the last title that we will be presenting is The Filler Art God School, which comes out this March. This is from the author of Apothecary Diaries, and it's another great shoujo manga, but this time closer to our modern day era, but still retaining the charm of the ancient world. So the Filler at God School is about a high school girl, Nagi, one of the heirs to the family temple. Next slide, please. So unfortunately, her grandmother passed away, and without her, the shrine doesn't have the necessary divinity to function. Nagi also has a brother, but because he's a shut-in, he cannot assume the family position. So it's really up to her to find a god, someone with a powerful magical abilities, to keep the temple running. Next slide, please. So after a series of very thrilling events, Nagi then finds herself enrolled in a prestigious school for talented individuals. There, she soon discovers that, while weak, she does possess supernatural powers of her own, and decides to challenge herself and her peers' expectation and rise to the level of God. Next slide, please. Featuring gorgeous artwork that kind of has the same charm of Clamp's Card Capture Sakura or Kami-sama Kiss, if you're familiar with that. It has also a lot of the same vibes. The Filler at God School is a feast for the eyes as it is for the heart. Something that we also want to highlight is that the Filler God School, is the perfect example of shoujo manga not being just about romance. Much of the story, in fact, is focused on Nagi's inner growth, her relationship with the other students, and her just trying to figure out her own place both in the human and supernatural world. Again, the fiddler at God's well, she's in high school, so well, but the fiddler at God School releases this March, and fans have been very excited to pick this up, and we hope that you will also check this out. Next slide.
All right. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. If you have any questions, please feel free to shoot me an email, morgana.santilli@yenpress.com. I hope that you check some of these out and enjoy the rest of the webinar.
Thank you so much, Team Yen Press. Next, we'll hear from Jen Chan. Following her passion as a consummate reader and lover of art, graphic design, and books, Jen began her career working in bookstores soon after graduating college. She moved into the publishing world in 2001, working for trade sales for W.W. Norton, PRH Client Services, and for a number of independent art publishers. She's currently the Executive Director of Sales and Marketing at Fantagraphics Books. The floor is yours, Jen.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Today, I'll be presenting highlights from our spring and summer list. Please note that age ranges are included on each title slide, along with the on-sale dates in red. First up, coming in April, is Precious Rubbish, the remarkable graphic novel debut by Kayla E. Precious Rubbish is an experimental graphic memoir drawn in a style that references the aesthetics of mid-century children's comics and tells the story of a childhood shaped by maternal emotional dysregulation, rural poverty, and incest. The author's childhood is portrayed as a collection of short-form comics and gag panels, punctuated by interactive elements like paper dolls, satirical advertisements, games, and puzzles. While the work is concerned with violence and a particularly Texan brand of Pentecostal fanaticism, it is presented in a playful, visual language with a deadpan humor that elevates the material beyond mere graphic memoir. This book asks the reader to do the extra textual work of filling out narrative gaps, which mirrors the challenge of trauma recollection. Precious Rubbish is a compelling and experimental work of comic storytelling and graphic medicine. In Raging Clouds, Amelie is a brilliant woman trapped in the restricting social mores of High Dutch society in the mid-16th century. Her marriage to Hans, a swashbuckling merchant, is a terrible match. While he charms the townsfolk, at home he is her intellectual inferior and treats her with cruelty and sexual violence. Expected to be a devoted housewife, Amelie can only be her true free-spirited self when Hans travels away on business, when she can explore the town alone, lose herself in literature, and study winged animals to learn about the mechanics of flight. She looks to the skies and dreams of flying far away. Her life changes when Hans returns from his journey with Sahara, a slave mistress from a distant land. The two women are drawn to each other, each recognizing their confinement in a world dominated by men, and work together to seek their freedom. In her lush manga style, Korean artist Yadori imagines the period in rich detail with careful attention to settings and costumes, while evoking the cultural and societal standards of the time. She creates complex women characters who grapple with indignity over their social position, engage in lustful fantasies, and ultimately relish in seizing agency in their lives. Raging Clouds is a powerful story about the role of women in society, the reality of existing within a non-consensual relationship, and the struggle to push back against the boundaries these women have been boxed into. Coming in late June, we have The Woman with 50 Faces, a revelatory graphic biography chronicling the elusive life and tumultuous times of Maria Lani. Lani blew into Paris claiming to be a famous German actress and proceeded to seduce the cultural elite with her undeniable charisma and strangely enticing enigmatic aura. She persuaded 50 artists to immortalize her in paintings and sculptures, which she claimed would appear as an important plot device in a forthcoming film. The artworks were unveiled as an exhibition in New York, which then traveled to Chicago and then on to major cities throughout Europe. But in 1931, as legend had it, she and her husband Max Abramovich vanished without a trace, and so did the art. The film was never made. But the truth is more complicated, and this book is about uncovering as much of the truth about Maria Lani as possible. In fact, she was born in 1895 in Poland and raised in the Jewish quarter, where she witnessed and suffered from anti-Semitism. Her parents died before she was 25, and she moved to Berlin and then to Paris. She did not vanish in 1931. She had simply played out her hand. She was still in Paris in 1941 when the Panzers rolled in, and she and her husband barely escaped to Spain and made their way to New York, where their adventures began anew. Jonathan Lackman spent 2 decades researching Lani's life, and Zachary Pinson spent 5,000 hours putting pen to paper. The result is a masterful collaboration about identity and the power and limits of reinvention. In July, legendary cartoonist Peter Bagge triumphantly returns to the series that defined a generation with this all-new hate graphic novel. Buddy Bradley and Lisa Leavenworth, now middle-aged with a free-spirited young adult of their own, confront their own poor decisions as young people in the grungy 1990s. Expertly shifting between the present day in full color and their Gen X heyday in glorious crosshatch black and white, we learn for the first time the story of how Buddy met Lisa, Stinky, George, and Val. Meanwhile, Buddy is forced to come to terms with the tragic and covered-up circumstances of Stinky's untimely death in the original Hate series, while also navigating elder care, contemporary politics, family, and friendships. Hate Revisited expertly showcases Bagge's inimitable humor and knack for character, and the generational shift lends an unexpected gravitas to their lives. While the original Hate is indelibly rooted in a key pop cultural era, the themes and characters of Hate remain timeless. Also coming this summer, we will have The Complete Hate, a new paperback series that includes the original 30-issue run from 1990 to 98, the 9 subsequent Hate annuals, and tons of other hate-related comics, illustrations, and ephemera created for books, magazines, comics, toys, and other merchandise. Bagge combined his cartoony drawing style with uncomfortably real Gen X characters, and the comic books resonated with readers. Volume 1 collects the first major arc of the series, Hate Issues 1 through 15, focusing on young Buddy Bradley's travails in early 1990s Seattle, with a lengthy introduction by Bagge. Each volume contains new covers, end papers, title pages, and other surprises by the author. Next up is the latest by John Ken Mortensen. Freestyle wrestler The Sledgehammer has never met defeat, not at the hands of Painkiller, Handsome Jens, Fez Kick the Giant, or the Angel of Death. But over the course of 80 pages, Danish illustrator Mortensen's surreal black and white graphic novel will take Sledgehammer to the limits of reality, to show that he's motivated by far more than hubris. It's also love. Mortensen's first English-language graphic novel delivers on the promise that his delightfully macabre books of illustration had previously made to readers around the world. With his spidery black ink style reminiscent of Edward Gorey's Gothic line, we're taken to a world in which heavy metal mixes with worldwide wrestling by way of the Seventh Seal and Faust. Best-selling manga artist Shintaro Kaigo returns at the height of his powers with Brain Damage, where he dials up the gore and absurdity to new heights. This book collects 4 new, short manga stories in a tantalizing blend of the hilarious and the macabre. In the opening story, Labyrinth Quartet, 4 identical young women trapped in an eerie building must solve the mystery of why they've been gathered there, while being hunted by a knife-wielding stalker. In Curse Room, a plucky health aide is tasked with keeping zombies peaceful, lest they go on a brain-eating rampage. In Family Portrait, people throughout town are strangely disappearing without a trace, and the key to it all is a senile and perverted old man. Finally, in Blood Harvest, a series of gruesomely mangled bodies are found in pristine cars, and it appears something sinister lurks within these masses of glass and steel. From the brilliant and twisted mind of manga artist Kaigo, this new short story collection is rife with skin-crawling suspense, visceral body horror, and pitch-dark humor. Last but not least, we have Buff Soul in August. How do you prevent history from repeating itself, and is it possible to protect the one you love from themselves? When cartoonist Moa Romanova joins her rock star bestie on a US tour, life quickly turns chaotic as adolescent trauma begins to haunt her. Buff Soul tackles addiction, friendship, and loss in a rollicking road trip adventure involving selling speed, breaking bones, massive hangovers, drug withdrawal, and shooting guns in the desert. What begins as an insanely comical, hedonistic road trip in the spirit of Pineapple Express takes a dark turn when her best friend disappears. This event triggers memories of an adolescent trauma she had yet to reckon with, leading Romanova to confront the reality of how far she's let her self-destruction go and to find a way to overcome it. That's it for me. Thanks again to all who registered and for tuning in. All the titles in my presentation are available on Edelweiss and NetGalley, where you can download digital galleys and previews. Please feel free to contact me if you want to join our catalog mail list or with any review copy requests or questions you may have. I also send out newsletters for both our adult and children's titles, so please get in touch if you'd like to sign up, and be sure to check us out and follow us on social media as well. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, Jen. Finally, we'll hear from Katie Zane. Katie is the Director of Sales Book Market at Oni Press. She began her publishing career in the marketing department of Lion Forge Comics, where she helped launch best-selling and critically acclaimed graphic novels such as Brenna Thumler's Sheets, Maya Kobe's Genderqueer, and Wendy Xu and Suzanne Walker's Mooncake before joining the Oni Press team in 2019. When she's not sharing her love of great reads, she's most likely to be found hiking with her rambunctious pup or taking on a new DIY project. Thanks for joining us today, Katie.
Hey everybody, thanks for being here today. My name is Katie Sains. I'm the Director of Sales for the Book Market here at Oni Press. You definitely have Oni Press titles on your shelves, I guarantee it. We are the publisher of Genderqueer, Scott Pilgrim, the Tea Dragon Society series, Sheets, Mooncakes, and hundreds more. So without further ado, we will launch on into our new titles for spring. Next. First up today, we have Sesame Street, Grover Lends a Hand. Next, this is the first in our new line of Sesame Street comics for early readers. You'll find all of your favorite Sesame Street characters here. You've got Super Grover, Elmo, Bert, Ernie, Big Bird, Cookie Monster, and all of your favorite furry friends. Next, this first adventure for early readers teaches kids about the importance of asking for help and working together, as each character on Sesame Street is having a different problem, and it's only when they start to work together that they can solve all of their problems and enjoy this beautiful sunny day. Next. The Sesame Street brand upholds very rigorous learning standards, so you can expect that same level of developmental content and learning in all of our comics as well. So this first book releases in June. Next. And we have 3 more coming out this year as well, with Sesame Street Bert and Ernie's Spring Cleaning in July, Sesame Street Cookie Monster's Dinner Party in August, and Sesame Street The Amazing Mumford's Card Trick in September. These are great for readers who are maybe a little bit more on the younger side, hoping to get into comics. Next. Our next title today is The Lost Sunday by Eilina Sir Duncan. Next. So this one follows a young girl who lives in this world where 6 angry wolves rule the days of the week. Next. And each wolf brings with it different chores and tasks to be done. And when each of these days is over, the week just starts right back over and you're back at that same cycle of doing the same horrible tasks. So one girl decides to set off on a quest for the legendary lost wolf Sunday. Next. Now, Sunday is a day of the wolf of rest, and so she's hoping to restore rest and order to her community. This is based on the Brothers Grimm fairy tale Frau Hall and the Romanian fairy tale The Wise Man's Old Daughter, and it's been beautifully updated for our modern world. Next. So expect to find a lot of messaging around how important balance is in our lives, as when Nina does bring back the Lost Wolf Sunday, every day gets a little bit of rest, and even Sunday gets a little bit of work. This one is absolutely adorable, and you can find it on sale in June. Next slide, please. Our next title today is Goat Magic by Kate Wheeler. So if the Tea Dragon Society does really well for you, you definitely want to pick up Goat Magic next. This is a very soft and gentle queer fantasy. It follows two girls, Trill, who is a goat herder who has a very instinctual kind of magic where she can communicate with goats. Next. And the other girl is Alia, who is a cursed palace princess who has been cursed to appear as a black goat during the day. So when these two girls cross paths, they will have to work together to solve the goat curse. Next. Evade the royal forces pursuing them that intend to overthrow the current royal family. Next. And also acknowledge that budding romance growing between them. So this one has a lot of Studio Ghibli vibes. Great for fans of like Haru, Aster and the Accidental Magic, The Prince and the Dressmaker, and many more. Next. And also, it's going to sound silly, but goats are really big with the middle grade age group right now. So I promise you they will be so excited when this book releases in August. Next slide, please. Our next title today moves into the teen titles that we'll be presenting, and this one is Hey Mary by Andrew Wheeler and Rye Hickman. Next. So this one follows one questioning teen who's very religious as he's coming to the realization that he's also queer. And so he is trying to figure out how he's going to mesh these two seemingly disparate aspects of his identity. Next. And he's going to seek advice from everyone in his life. So his local priest, his local drag queen, and the saints and angels who come alive and speak to him about the lesser known queer history and biblical stories. This is a very pondering, not preaching exploration of what it means to be queer and religious in today's society. Next. Both of these creators grew up in very religious households and are queer, so this comes from a very heartfelt place that's very close to home for them. This is something that I really haven't seen explored in this manner before. And it feels like it should exist, but doesn't, so definitely a unique read to add to your shelves this April. Next. Our next teen read for you is Toxic Summer by Derek Charm. This is a neon-infused ode to Y2K as two best friends, next, set off on an adventure this summer. They're hoping to go to the beach where they hope to find all of the hot boys. But when they get there, they show up and find out that the beach has been shut down due to a toxic spill. Next. That's turning all of the inhabitants into slimy, tentacled creatures. So this is very like Scooby-Doo meets Riverdale meets Creature from the Black Lagoon, as these two teams have to figure out what exactly is going on here so they can get their sexy summer back on track. Next. And Derek Charm is an Eisner Award-nominated winner from things like Unbeatable Squirrel Girl and Jughead. So he's bringing his Archie style to this radioactive read that releases in April. So right ahead of the summer and the perfect beach read. Next. Our next title today is Espada, The Will of the Blade. Next. This one flips classic sword and sorcery on its head as it follows a girl who lives in a world where only her and her mother have access to power. They're part of the royal family, and she starts questioning why that is. Next. So she wonders what would happen if everyone had the same power. And when she discovers this mysterious legendary sword, she sets off on a quest to find the truth. This one is perfect for fans of Nimona, Monstrous, Snapdragon, Squire, Under Kingdom, and The Well. And it's from Spanish creator Annabel Collazo. Next. And this one releases in May. So definitely make sure to check it out. It's the first time it will be published in English. Next. Moving into the adult side of the presentation today, we're going to start off with EC Epitaphs from the Abyss. Next. So now, if EC rings a bell for anyone, it was originally a comics series published in the early 1930s through 1950s. They did tales of of the Crypt, Vault of Horror, Weird Science, and many, many more. And they, at the time, were outselling DC, Marvel, and Archie. So they were really big when they were being published, and they were eventually shut down by the Comics Code Authority in 1956, and there have been no new EC comics since then. So we are the first to publish brand new EC comics in over 70 years. This is a big moment, not just for the comics industry, but for the pop culture industry as a whole, as folks like Steven Spielberg, Stephen King, Guillermo del Toro, George Lucas have all cited EC as one of their primordial influences on their works. Next. So this is not something that we take lightly. We're bringing back an all-star cast of creative talents to reimagine EC. And our premise with this one is, what if EC had never been forced to stop publishing? What would it be like today? And so our goal is to publish those same sort of socially conscious, subversive stories and all of the horror that you could ever want with EC Epitaphs from the Abyss. Next. Now, this one releases in May, and there is definitely more to come. We've got a second volume coming out in November as well with a whole different cast of creative talent. Next. And we also have its science fiction sister title, Cruel Universe, coming out in July. So definitely keep those two on your radar. They're going to be amazing. Next. Our next title today is the Nacelleverse, Biker Mice from Mars and RoboForce. Next. This is the start of a new toy and animation universe. These characters originally were around in the 1980s and 1990s. They had animated series and action figures associated with them, and they're all getting new life in these comic book series, and many of them also have new animated series in the works. Next. So RoboForce, for example, has an animated series that's going to be coming out in April from Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's production company. This series is great for fans of like Transformers and G.I. Joe, Voltron, and things like that. So definitely make sure to check out these two when they release in May. Next. And there will be more to come from this universe. So you'll see characters like Power Lords, Sectars, the Great Garlu, Cowboys from Moon Mesa, and many more coming out soon. Next. Our next title today is Meat Eaters by Eisner Award-nominated creator Meredith McLaren, who you might know from Black Cloak. Next. So the undead are very much unalive and unwell in this series that sees teen vampires, local werewolf packs, and ghouls, and all matter of the supernatural come into play. So this follows 19-year-old Ashley Moore, who, after being murdered in the woods, wakes up the next morning and nobody really realizes that she's died. So she decides to just like keep on going with her regular life, going back to high school, like just seeing, what's going to happen here. She falls in with her local werewolf pack and makes some new friends, all the while suppressing the memories and the trauma that's happened to her. Next. And as she does that, the more she suppresses it, the more it rears its head in dangerous and unexpected ways. So this definitely does deal with like mental health and trauma, but also this main character has like a very snarky, kind of fun attitude about her. So it adds a little bit of levity to this supernatural tale. Next. This is perfect for your fans of Haunted Girl, Buffy, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Teen Wolf, Squad, and more. And it comes out in July. Next up, we've got Skin Police. This is the last title I have for you today. This is Blade Runner meets Demolition Man. Next. So it's a futuristic thriller where illegal clone babies can turn into homicidal monsters at a moment's notice, and only the Skin Police can track them down. Next. So this one is very much an intense high-stakes thriller full of peril, government conspiracies, and very impossible choices. It will definitely keep readers on the edge of their seats. It is set in the 22nd century where things like fertility pandemics, European dictatorships, and worldwide changing landscapes all set the stage for this crazy story that's got very much a Mobius meets Frank Miller visual style. Next. And this one is coming out in August, so definitely keep an eye out for this, along with all the other titles that we've shown you today. Next. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at any time at katie@onipress.com. Thanks all.
Thanks so much, Katie, and a big thank you to all of today's presenters. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, title list, certificate of completion, and video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit www.booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's video recording, resource list, and a certificate of completion. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit www.booklistonline.com/webinars. You can also find out about our latest webinars on our social channels. Visit us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and now Blue Sky. Also, I need new glasses. And just a note that we are no longer on X, so please find us on those other channels for the latest Booklist news and updates. Booklist is back with a new series of free readers advisory workshops on Wednesday, March 12th. Join us for 3 sessions led by library experts in the field focusing on genre blending in adult and YA titles, nonfiction readers advisory, and hot tips for hand selling. All sessions will be recorded, and to be sure you receive the recording and other workshop resources, sign up on our website. New year, new website. Booklist is thrilled to share our newly designed website with an enhanced search engine, new recommendation resources, special content for ALA members, and so much more. Head over to booklistonline.com and start exploring. And speaking of new content for ALA members, we are thrilled to announce that the digital version of Booklist Reader, the monthly reader's advisory magazine from the editors of Booklist, is now an ALA member. Head over to our news site to start reading. And if you're not already a Booklist subscriber, you'll be able to use your ALA membership ID to sign up. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. One more huge thank you to our panelists and to our sponsors, Batcave, Yen Press, Fantagraphics, and Oni Press. This concludes today's webinar. See you next time.